To my daughter, who finally found a man desperate enough. My father said that, glass raised, smile wide, 60 guests staring. At my own engagement party, the room went dead silent. Not the polite kind. The kind where you can hear someone's breath catch 3 tables away. My fiancé's hand clenched under the tablecloth. I felt his body start to rise, but I held his arm, held it firm. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked to the front of that room, opened my laptop, and projected one single document onto the screen. My father's business partner of 15 years dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor. And that was the sound of my father's entire life falling apart. But this story doesn't start at the party. It starts 3 months earlier, the night I found something in my father's books that I was never supposed to see. I'm Danielle Upton, 29 years old, and I'm a forensic accountant. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story genuinely speaks to you. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, let me take you back to last October, the night my father called me a charity case for the last time. My father, Richard Upton, built his construction company from nothing. Literally nothing. A pickup truck, a handshake loan, and 17-hour days. By the time I was born, Upton and Marsh Construction had 12 employees, a fleet of trucks, and a reputation in our town that made people stand a little straighter when my father walked into a room. I grew up watching people admire him. The neighborhood barbecue host, the church fundraiser chair, the guy who bought a round for everyone at the country club bar and never let you forget it. At home, though, things ran on different rules. My father didn't hit. He didn't need to. He had a voice that could make you feel 6 inches tall without ever raising it above conversational volume. I was 9 the first time I remember clearly, 4th grade. I brought home a report card, straight A's, teacher's note saying I was a joy to have in class. I set it on the kitchen counter like I was presenting evidence in my own defense. He barely looked at it. Good grades don't mean you're smart, Danielle. Teachers hand those out when they feel sorry for a kid. My mother, Linda, was sitting right there. She sipped her coffee, said nothing. That was the system. He cut. She watched. I bled quietly. But here's what made it so confusing. And this is the part people don't understand about growing up like this. My father wasn't cruel every day. When I was 12, he taught me to ride a bike in the driveway, and when I finally made it to the end of the street without falling, he said, "That's my girl." I held on to those 4 words for years, replayed them when things got bad. It wasn't until much later that I realized he'd said it in front of the Marshes, who were over for dinner. I was performing well. He was taking credit. That's the only version of pride my father ever had, the kind with an audience. The pattern didn't change as I got older. It just got more sophisticated. College graduation. I finished magna cum laude, accounting, minor in criminal justice. I'd worked 2 jobs to keep my GPA where it was. My hands were shaking when I walked across that stage. My parents came. My father wore his best suit. And at the dinner afterward, a steakhouse I couldn't afford, which he chose, he spent 45 minutes telling my college friends about his company's latest municipal contract. 45 minutes. My friends kept glancing at me. I kept smiling. When the check came, he said, loudly enough for the table, "Well, Danielle, let's hope that diploma's worth more than the paper it's printed on." Everyone laughed, because that's what you do when Richard Upton makes a joke. You laugh. A year later, I landed my first real position at a forensic accounting firm. Good firm, competitive hire. I called my parents to share the news. My mother said congratulations. My father got on the line and said, "Let's hope you don't bankrupt them." I laughed. I said, "Thanks, Dad." I hung up. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes. You know what the worst part is? I thought that was normal. When cruelty is the water you swim in, you don't know you're drowning. You think that's just how the current moves. It wasn't until Nathan that someone finally held up a mirror. He said it on our 3rd date, after I told a funny story about my father making a speech at my cousin's wedding, where he joked that I was next, if anyone would have her. Nathan didn't laugh. He set his fork down and looked at me. "Danielle, That's not normal. You know that, right? I didn't answer. But something cracked open that night. Something small. Something that would eventually change everything. I met Nathan Cole at a joint conference for attorneys and forensic accountants in Baltimore. He was presenting on financial fraud litigation. I was taking notes 3 rows back. He wasn't flashy. He didn't command a room the way my father did. Nathan was the kind of man who listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, every word landed exactly where it was supposed to. Steady, grounded. The opposite of everything I'd grown up around. We dated for 14 months before I brought him home to meet my parents. I should have known how it would go. My father opened the door, shook Nathan's hand, and within 3 minutes had turned the living room into an interview. Where did Nathan go to school? What was his salary range? Did he come from money? Nathan answered everything calmly. No defensiveness, no posturing, just honest, direct answers. Then my father leaned back in his chair and said, "I hope you're patient, son. My daughter is the kind who needs to be led." The room went quiet. My mother looked at her hands. I opened my mouth to say something, I don't even know what, but Nathan got there first. "With all due respect, sir, Danielle is the most capable person I've ever met." No heat, no aggression, just a fact, delivered like he was reading it off a page. My father didn't respond. He just stared at Nathan for a long 3 seconds, then changed the subject to football. But I saw it. The micro shift in his jaw, the flicker behind his eyes. Nathan wasn't afraid of him. And that, I realize now, was the beginning of the end. Because my father's entire system depended on everyone in the room being just a little bit afraid. And Nathan simply wasn't. The man I loved had just become my father's newest problem. Nathan proposed on a Sunday morning. No ring and a champagne glass. No skywriting. He made me coffee, sat across from me at our kitchen table, and said, "I want the rest of my life to look exactly like this. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished the sentence. We wanted something small for the engagement party. 15, maybe 20 people. Our friends. A backyard. Some wine. Simple. My father had other plans. He called 2 days after the proposal. "I'm handling the party, Danielle. I've already booked the Whitfield." The Whitfield, a venue he used for his corporate events. Valet parking, marble floors, projector screens, and surround sound for presentations. "Dad, we don't need all that. Nathan and I were thinking something casual." "Casual?" He laughed. "My daughter's engagement, and you want hot dogs in the backyard? I'm paying for it. Let me do this." I looked at Nathan. He shook his head slowly. Then my mother called. Her voice had that practiced softness she used when she wanted me to fold. "Just let him have this, Danielle. He's your father. He's trying to do something nice." So I folded, the way I always folded, the way she taught me to fold. Within a week, the guest list ballooned to 60. I scrolled through the names on my phone. His country club friends, his business contacts, his golf partners, people whose last names I recognized from his company's holiday card list. My friends? 8, total. This wasn't my engagement party, it was his stage, and I'd handed him the microphone without a fight. I didn't know yet that he'd been writing his toast for a week, and that what he'd written wasn't a blessing, it was a weapon. The night before the party, Nathan and I were lying in bed, lights off, both staring at the ceiling. "This is your party," he said quietly. "Not his. You can still change the plan. If I fight him now, he'll make the next 6 months a nightmare. You don't know him when he's angry, Nathan. Let's just get through the night." Nathan was quiet for a long time. Then he rolled over to face me. "Okay, but I need you to hear something. I'm not marrying your father. I'm marrying you. And at some point, you're going to have to decide where the line is." He kissed my forehead and turned out the lamp. I lay there in the dark, thinking. There's a story my mother told me once when I was 16. Just the two of us, cleaning up after Thanksgiving. She said that early in her marriage, maybe year 2 or 3. She'd pushed back against my father about something. She wouldn't say what. He responded by canceling her credit card. Not temporarily, permanently. She had to ask him for grocery money for the next 8 months until he decided she'd learned her lesson. She told me this while drying a plate. Smiling? like it was a funny anecdote about the weather. She never pushed back again. Not once. Not in 30 years. That night, lying next to Nathan, I finally understood what that story really was. It wasn't a memory, it was a warning. My mother was showing me the price of silence and the cost of speaking up. I looked at the ceiling and thought, if I don't draw the line now, I will become her. Smiling through the pain, drying plates, telling my own daughter the same story someday, like it was just something that happened. I couldn't sleep after that. The next evening, Friday, the night before the party, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off the seating chart. My father was in his study, door open, reading glasses on, writing something on a yellow legal pad. "Dad, what are you writing?" He didn't look up. "My toast. Don't worry about it." "Can I read it?" Now he looked up, smiled. The kind of smile that never reached past his mouth. "You'll hear it tomorrow, along with everyone else." Something cold moved through my chest. "Dad, it's my engagement party. I think I have a right to—" "Danielle." His voice dropped half a register, the warning tone, the one that meant, stop talking. "Trust me, sweetheart. Everyone will remember this toast." My mother appeared in the doorway, holding a mug of tea. She read the room in half a second, she was always good at that, and steered the conversation sideways. "Your father always gives wonderful speeches, honey. Remember Uncle Joe's retirement?" I remembered. Uncle Joe's retirement dinner. 4 years ago. My father stood up in front of 40 people and joked that Joe was retiring because no one needed him anymore, not even his wife. Joe laughed. Everyone laughed. Joe's wife didn't. That was my father's gift. He could gut you in public and make it sound like affection. I left the study without another word, grabbed my laptop bag from the car. I had a client audit deadline Monday morning and needed to finalize files over the weekend. The bag went in the trunk. "Bring the laptop to the party," Nathan had said earlier. "You can work during setup. Send the file before dinner." A practical suggestion, nothing more. That laptop would end up being the most important thing I brought to that party. But neither of us knew that yet. Saturday morning, the day of the party. I was drinking coffee and reviewing seating assignments when the event coordinator emailed the final guest list. Richard had made last-minute additions. I opened the attachment. 62 names. I started counting. His golf foursome. The Hendersons from the country club. 2 couples from his Rotary chapter. The Warrens, his insurance broker and wife. A contractor he'd known for 6 months. 6 months, and the man was invited to my engagement party. Gerald and Patricia Marsh. Table 1. Front and center, right next to family. My college friends, my co-workers, I found them. Table 8, by the kitchen. I called my father. "Dad, where are my people? Emily, Jazz, the group from work, they're at the back table." "There wasn't room up front, Danielle. I had to prioritize." "Prioritize who? Your golf buddies?" His voice sharpened. "This is a networking opportunity, not a slumber party. Don't be selfish." I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from the old, familiar helplessness of being rearranged by someone who thinks they own every room they walk into. Nathan was watching from across the kitchen. He hadn't said a word during the call, but his jaw was tight. "He invited Gerald to sit at table 1, I said. "Front row, right next to us." Nathan leaned against the counter. "You know why, right?" I looked at him. "He's performing," Nathan said. "For Gerald. For all of them. The loving father, the happy family. He's putting us on display like a window display for his business partners." I stared at the guest list on my screen. 62 names, and I was a prop at my own party. I closed the laptop, got dressed, and drove to the venue to watch my father's show. I arrived at the Whitfield an hour early to help with setup. The venue was exactly the kind of place my father loved. Exposed brick, brass fixtures, long mahogany bar. A projector screen at the far end, already rigged for the slideshow my father had curated of family photos. Photos he chose. Moments he approved of. I was adjusting centerpieces at table 3 when I heard his voice. It came from the hallway near the coat check. My father and Gerald Marsh, standing close, drinks already in hand. I was around the corner. They didn't see me. "I tell you, Gerald, I'm so proud of my little girl." My father's voice, warm, expansive, the voice he used in public. "She's everything I raised her to be." Gerald laughed. "You've done a hell of a job, Rich. Not every father stays this involved. Family first. That's always been my motto." I stood there behind the wall, centerpiece still in my hand. The word echoed. Proud. My father had just said he was proud of me. He had never, not once, said that word to my face. Not at graduation. Not when I passed my CPA. Not when I earned my CFE certification. Not even once in 29 years. But here, in a hallway, to the man whose money he was stealing. That's where the word lived. It was currency, spent where it would buy him something. I set the centerpiece down and walked away. Quietly. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I just filed it where I file everything my father gives me, in the place where pain sits so long it starts to feel like furniture. What I didn't know yet was this. Gerald Marsh, the man standing there calling my father a great dad, had been quietly losing hundreds of thousands of dollars to the man he was toasting. And I had the proof on my laptop in the trunk of my car. Let me back up. 3 months before the party, I was working late at my firm, deep in a forensic audit for a commercial client, a mid-size real estate developer flagged for irregular disbursements. Tedious work. Spreadsheets and wire transfers and shell companies layered like Russian dolls. I was tracing a chain of payments through a limited liability company, registered in Delaware, as they always are, when something snagged. The LLC had no website, no employees on record, no public filings beyond the bare minimum. But the wire transfers flowing through it were substantial, consistent, monthly. I kept pulling the thread. The LLC was linked to a holding company. The holding company shared a registered agent with another entity. And that entity, buried 3 layers down, behind enough paperwork to make your eyes bleed, connected back to a name I recognized. Upton and Marsh Construction, LLC, my father's company. I stared at the screen. My coffee went cold. The office was empty. Everyone had left hours ago. The cleaning crew was vacuuming down the hall. My training kicked in before my emotions could. Certified fraud examiners have an obligation. If we uncover evidence of financial fraud during the course of our work, we don't get to look away. It's not optional. It's the job. But this was my father. I saved the files, closed the laptop, drove home, sat in my car in the driveway for 10 minutes, engine off, hands on the wheel. Then I went inside, opened a new folder on my personal laptop, and named it Project Atlas. Over the next several weeks, I worked on it after hours, alone, tracing every transaction, documenting every discrepancy, building the kind of report I build for clients. Except this time, the subject was the man who raised me. I told no one, not yet. 2 weeks in, I told Nathan. Not because I wanted to, because I couldn't carry it alone anymore. I was waking up at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, running numbers in my head, second-guessing every entry in that folder. The auditor in me knew what the data showed. The daughter in me kept looking for another explanation. There wasn't one. I sat Nathan down at the kitchen table on a Tuesday night, showed him the summary. He read it slowly, the way lawyers read everything, once for content, once for implications. When he finished, he looked up. How much? Hard to say without full access, but based on what I can trace, significant. Over a decade. He set the papers down. What do you want to do with this? I don't know. He's my father. Nathan nodded. He didn't push, didn't lecture, didn't say what any reasonable person would have said, which is, your father is a thief. Instead, he leaned forward and said the thing that mattered most. He's also stealing from a man who trusts him. Gerald's been his partner for 15 years. I looked at the table, the grain in the wood, the ring stain from my coffee mug. Whatever you decide, Nathan said. I'm with you. But don't sit on this too long. Gerald deserves to know. I agreed. My plan was clear. Finish the audit, compile the full report, get through the engagement party. Then, Monday morning, I'd send the report directly to Gerald, face to face if possible. Clean, professional. No drama, no scene. Just the truth, delivered the way I'd deliver it to any client. Bring the laptop to the party, Nathan said a few days later. You've got that Monday deadline anyway. It was a practical suggestion, reasonable. The kind of thing that made complete sense at the time. My father, of course, had his own plans for that evening, and they changed mine entirely. Saturday evening, 6:30. The Whitfield looked like a magazine spread. Candles on every table, white orchid arrangements, a string quartet in the corner playing something soft and classical that I couldn't name. My father had outdone himself. That was the thing about Richard Upton. When he performed flawlessly. Nathan and I arrived together. I was wearing a cream silk dress I'd bought specifically for tonight. Nathan was in a navy suit, his hand steady on the small of my back as we walked through the double doors. My father met us in the foyer. He was already working the room, champagne in hand, handshake ready. There she is, he opened his arms. There's my beautiful girl. He hugged me, held it for 3 full seconds. His cologne was sharp and expensive. My body went rigid. My father never called me beautiful, not at prom, not at graduation, not in 29 years of living under his roof. But here, in front of the arriving guests, in front of Gerald and Patricia Marsh, who were handing their coats to the attendant, I was suddenly his beautiful girl. I hugged him back. Because what else do you do? Gerald shook my hand warmly. Congratulations, Danielle. Your father hasn't stopped talking about this party for weeks. Thank you, Mr. Marsh. I'm glad you're here. And I meant it, though not in the way he thought. Nathan squeezed my hand under the table once we sat down. I leaned into him and whispered, He's performing. Nathan whispered back, I know. Just breathe. I looked around the room. 60 faces, candles flickering, wine pouring. My father moving from table to table like a candidate working a rally, shaking hands, clapping shoulders, laughing the big laugh. This was his night. Not mine. Not yet. Dinner was served at 7:15. My father had arranged the seating so he was at the head of our table, table 1, with Gerald and Patricia to his right, my mother to his left, and Nathan and me across from them, like a tribunal. The food was excellent, the wine was expensive, and my father was in rare form. Somewhere between the salad course and the entree, he started telling stories. Not about Nathan and me, about me, the greatest hits of Danielle's failures, repackaged as comedy. Did I ever tell you about the time Danielle failed her driving test? 3 times. He held up 3 fingers. Laughter rippled down the table. And the cooking, oh God, the cooking. She nearly burned the kitchen down making scrambled eggs. Scrambled eggs! More laughter. Then he leaned in, conspiratorial, like he was sharing a secret. And her first boyfriend? What was his name? Danielle? Kevin? Kyle? He lasted about 4 months before he ran for the hills. The table laughed. My mother laughed. Even people who didn't know me laughed, because my father had that gift, the gift of making cruelty sound like warmth. I smiled. The autopilot smile. The one I'd been practicing since I was 9. Nathan didn't smile. His hand found mine under the table and held it. Across the table, Patricia Marsh tilted her head slightly. She leaned toward my mother and said, softly, but not softly enough, Richard's being a bit hard on her tonight, isn't he? My mother's answer came instantly, reflexively, the way a trained response always does. Oh, that's just how he shows love. Patricia looked at me. Our eyes met for half a second. She didn't say anything else. But I could see it. The recognition. The quiet alarm of a woman who knows exactly what she's watching. She told me later, I knew right then. I just didn't know how bad it was about to get. 8:15. Dessert plates cleared. The string quartet paused. My father stood up. He buttoned his jacket, picked up a spoon, tapped it against his champagne glass 3 times. The room quieted in that practiced way. The way people quiet down for a man they've learned to listen to. I want to raise a glass to my daughter Danielle. I straightened in my chair. My heart did something stupid. It hoped. Even after everything, after 29 years of evidence, some broken part of me still leaned toward the light. Maybe this time. For 29 years, he said, scanning the room with that showman's gaze, I've watched this girl struggle. The word landed like a stone in water. With school, with work, with every relationship that didn't quite work out. My face went hot. I could feel 60 pairs of eyes shifting toward me. I'll be honest, There were times I wasn't sure anyone would stick around long enough to figure her out. A few uncomfortable laughs, glasses held midair. Then he raised his champagne flute, smiled his biggest smile, and delivered the line he'd been writing all week. So tonight, I want to toast to Danielle, who finally found a man desperate enough. He laughed. A big, generous Richard Upton laugh. No one joined him. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I've ever heard. 60 people, frozen, forks down, eyes wide. A woman at table 4 covered her mouth with her hand. Gerald Marsh stared at his plate. Patricia's hand went to her husband's arm. Nathan's whole body tensed beside me. I felt his weight shift. His chair started to move. I put my hand on his arm, firm, steady. "Don't," I whispered. "I've got this." The silence held. A few people at the far tables raised their glasses out of sheer discomfort. Muscle memory overriding judgment. Most didn't. Mark, Nathan's best man, set his glass down on the table deliberately, like he was making a statement. He shook his head once. Slow. Helen Cole, Nathan's mother, turned and looked directly at my mother. The look on her face wasn't anger. It was disbelief. Pure, undiluted disbelief. My mother looked away. My father stood there, glass still raised, reading the room. He was smart enough to feel the temperature drop. But Richard Upton had never once backed down from a room in his life, so he doubled down. "Oh, come on," he said, grinning wider. "It's a joke. Danielle knows I love her." He turned to me, eyes bright with that manufactured warmth. "Right, sweetheart?" 60 people looked at me. I looked at my father. 5 seconds passed. 5 seconds is a long time when no one is breathing. Then I said it. Quiet. Clear. 2 words. "Sit down, Dad." His grin faltered. Just a crack. "Danielle, don't be dramatic." I said sit down. My voice didn't rise. I didn't need it to. The room was so silent that a whisper would have carried to the back wall. My father stared at me. For one horrible, electric second, I thought he was going to argue. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked around, searching for an ally, a laugh, anyone, and found nothing. Just 60 faces watching him like witnesses. He sat down. It was the first time in my entire life that my father did what I told him to do. I pushed my chair back, stood up, smoothed the front of my dress, and walked, calm, steady, no rush, to the front of the room. I had a laptop in my bag, and a file that had been waiting for this moment without either of us knowing it. The walk from table 1 to the front of that room was maybe 30 feet. It felt like a mile. I could feel every set of eyes tracking me, the rustle of napkins, someone clearing their throat, a chair creaking as someone shifted to see better. My laptop bag was under the AV table near the projection screen. I'd stashed it there during setup, planning to send my Monday file during cocktail hour. I hadn't needed it then. I needed it now. I unzipped the bag, opened the laptop. My hands were steady. My heart was not. My father's voice came from behind me, sharp. "Danielle, what are you doing?" I didn't turn around. I plugged the HDMI cable into the projector port. The same projector my father had set up for his curated family slideshow. Photos of vacations he'd chosen, holidays he'd staged, a highlight reel of a family that didn't exist. The screen lit up. I opened the folder, Project Atlas. Then I turned to face the room. 60 people. My mother gripping her napkin. Nathan standing now 3 steps behind me. Gerald Marsh at table 1, his reading glasses still perched on his nose from reviewing the dessert menu. "My father just told 60 people that no man would willingly marry me," I said. My voice was even, professional, the same tone I use when I present findings to a client. "I think it's only fair that these same 60 people know who my father really is." I clicked the file open. The first page filled the screen. White background, black text, a header that read, "Forensic Audit Summary, Unauthorized Fund Transfers, Upton and Marsh Construction, LLC." Gerald Marsh's champagne glass began to tilt in his hand. I didn't give a speech. I didn't need to. "This is a forensic audit report I compiled over the past 3 months," I said. "It documents a pattern of unauthorized fund transfers from the company my father co-owns with Mr. Gerald Marsh." I scrolled to the summary page. 3 columns, dates, amounts, destination accounts, a decade of transactions laid out in the clean, clinical format I'd been trained to produce. The numbers spoke for themselves. My father shot to his feet. His chair scraped the marble floor with a sound that made two people flinch. "This is ridiculous!" His voice was loud now, loud in a way it never was in public, the indoor voice cracking open to show what lived underneath. "You don't know what you're talking about!" I turned and looked at him, directly. For the first time in 29 years, I looked at my father without flinching. "Dad, I'm a certified fraud examiner. This is literally what I do." The room didn't gasp. It was worse than that. It just absorbed. 60 people processing at once. I could see it moving across the tables like weather. The widened eyes, the hands reaching for phones, the couples leaning into each other to whisper. Then the sound. Glass on marble. Sharp. Final. Gerald Marsh's champagne flute slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. Patricia grabbed her husband's arm. "Gerald!" Gerald didn't look at her. He was staring at the screen. His face had gone gray. The kind of gray that comes when you're watching 15 years of trust dissolve in 15 seconds. Then he looked at my father, and the expression on Gerald Marsh's face, I'll never forget it. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was the look of a man discovering that his house has been on fire for years and no one told him. My father moved fast. He always did when the walls closed in. He stepped toward Gerald, both palms up, the peacemaker's pose. "Gerald, listen to me. She's lying. She's angry. I made a joke she didn't like, and now she's making things up to humiliate me." Gerald raised one hand. Didn't stand. Didn't shout. Just one hand, palm out, the way you stop traffic. "Don't." One word. But his voice shook, and that single tremor carried more weight than anything my father had said all night. Gerald reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. Right there, at table 1, in front of every person in that room. His voice was low but clear enough for the tables nearby to hear. "Ray, it's Gerald. I need you in the office Monday morning. First thing. It's about the partnership." He hung up. Set the phone on the table. Didn't look at my father again. Richard spun toward my mother. His composure was cracking now. Visibly. In real time. Like ice under weight. "Linda, tell them she's lost her mind. Tell them." My mother sat perfectly still. Her hands were folded on the table. Her eyes were on her plate. She said nothing. The same silence she'd given me for 29 years. She finally gave it to him. And for the first time, her silence wasn't protection. It was permission. Chairs began scraping. Guests at the far tables stood quietly, reaching for coats and purses. No dramatic exits. Just the slow, unmistakable withdrawal of people who no longer wanted to be in the room. Nathan stepped up beside me. He didn't say a word, just placed his hand gently between my shoulder blades. Then a voice came from table 2. Helen Cole, Nathan's mother, stood up. She walked over to me, took both my hands in hers and said, "I'm proud of you, sweetheart." 4 words. The exact 4 words I'd been waiting to hear from my father my entire life. They came from someone else's mother. And that somehow made them mean even more. Gerald stood up slowly. He steadied himself with one hand on the table, not because he was weak, but because he was holding himself together. He walked to my father. The 2 men stood face to face in front of 60. No, maybe 50 now. Some had already slipped out. Witnesses. 15 years, Rich. Gerald's voice was quiet, controlled. The voice of a man choosing his words because he knows a room full of people will remember every one of them. 15 years I trusted you. My father started talking fast. "Gerald, let me explain. There's context here. The transfers it's a restructuring. My accountant advised—" "Your accountant." Gerald almost laughed. Almost. "Your daughter is a forensic accountant, Richard. And she just showed me what your accountant was hiding." My father opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Gerald adjusted his jacket, straightened his tie. Then he said, quietly and precisely, "My lawyer will be in touch Monday morning. Don't call me. Don't come to the office. Don't contact me." He turned to Patricia. She was already standing, coat over her arm, ready. They'd been married 35 years. She knew when it was time to go. But Patricia stopped. She walked to me, took my hand and squeezed it. "Thank you for telling the truth, Danielle. I know what it cost you." I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. The Marshes walked out through the double doors. The room watched them go. No one tried to stop them. No one said goodbye to Richard. My father stood alone in the center of the room. The projector was still glowing behind him, casting the audit summary across his back like a shadow he couldn't shake. One by one, tables emptied, coats collected, cars started in the parking lot. Not a single person stopped to shake his hand on the way out. By 9 o'clock, the room was nearly empty. The string quartet had packed up 20 minutes ago. The waitstaff moved silently between tables, clearing plates from a dinner no one had finished. My mother sat at table 1. Same seat, same posture. She hadn't moved in 45 minutes. My father stood by the bar, jacket off, tie loose. He was holding a glass of whiskey he hadn't drunk. I closed my laptop, unplugged the HDMI cable, slid the laptop into my bag. My hands were trembling now, not during, but after. The adrenaline was leaving, and what it left behind was something heavier. I walked to the center of the room. My father looked at me. His eyes were red. I don't know if it was rage or something deeper, maybe both. "You just destroyed your own father," he said. I held his gaze. "No, Dad, you destroyed yourself. I just stopped covering for you." "Over a joke? You did this over a joke? This isn't about the toast, and you know it." He turned to my mother. "Last card, final play. Linda, you're going to let her do this to me?" My mother looked up from the table, and for the first time, in 30 years of marriage, in a lifetime of practiced silence, she spoke. "You did this, Richard, not her." 7 words, quiet, almost gentle, but they landed like a door closing. My father's face did something I'd never seen before. It crumbled. Not into tears, my father didn't cry, but into a kind of blankness. The look of a man who has run out of people to blame. I picked up my bag. Nathan was by the door holding my coat. "Goodbye, Dad," I said. He didn't respond. I walked out of the Whitfield with my hand in Nathan's. The November air was sharp and clean. I breathed it in, deep, full, like I'd been underwater for 29 years and had just broken the surface. My hands were still shaking. This wasn't victory. This was grief wearing a different coat. But it was done. Monday came fast. Gerald's attorney, Raymond Stein, was in the Upton and Marsh office by 8 a.m. with a court order for a full forensic audit of the company's books, conducted by an independent third-party firm, not me. My report was the catalyst, but the process had to be clean. I understood that. I wanted that. By Tuesday, word had traveled the way it always does in small communities, through phone calls that start with, "Did you hear?" and end with, "I always thought something was off." Richard Upton was removed from the membership roster of the Ridgewood Country Club, not suspended. Removed. 22 years of dues, charity galas, and golf tournaments, gone in a single board vote. The man who'd bought rounds for the entire bar couldn't get past the front desk. By Wednesday, 3 of the business contacts who'd sat at his carefully arranged tables on Saturday night had quietly severed ties. No public statements, just unreturned phone calls, canceled lunches, the slow, deliberate erasure that happens when people decide you're no longer worth the association. The news didn't make the paper. It didn't need to. In a community that size, the party itself was the headline. 60 witnesses, that's 60 versions of the story, spreading outward like ripples. My father called me 11 times that week. I didn't pick up. Not once. The 12th call went to voicemail. I listened to it once. "Danielle, you need to fix this. Call me back, now." Still giving orders, even now. I deleted the voicemail and set my phone on the counter, screen down. Nathan was making dinner. He looked over at me but didn't ask who called. He didn't need to. The man who controlled every room he walked into couldn't get his own daughter to answer the phone. And for the first time in my life, that silence was mine to give, not his to take. The independent audit took 6 weeks. When the final report came in, it confirmed everything in my file. And then some. $837,000. That was the total. Siphoned through Shell LLCs over a 10-year period. Monthly transfers, Small enough to avoid triggering automatic flags, large enough to fund a lifestyle that wasn't Richard Upton's to fund. The lake house, the boat, the country club membership he no longer had. Gerald filed a civil lawsuit in January. Breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, conversion of partnership assets. His attorney told Nathan, off the record, attorney to attorney, that a criminal referral to the district attorney's office was under consideration. My father hired a defense lawyer, a good one. But good lawyers cost money, and my father's liquid assets were frozen pending the outcome of the civil case. He burned through his personal savings in the first 2 months. By March, Upton and Marsh construction was suspended, operations halted, contracts voided. The 12 employees my father used to brag about were collecting unemployment. Then the lake house went up for sale. I saw the listing online, the same house where my father hosted 4th of July barbecues, where he held court on the back deck with a beer in his hand, telling everyone within earshot how he'd built everything from nothing. Turns out, a lot of that everything belonged to Gerald. Nathan showed me the listing one evening. I looked at it for 10 seconds, then closed the tab. "You okay?" he asked. "I didn't do this to him," I said. "He did this to himself." Nathan nodded. "I know. But it still doesn't feel good. It's not supposed to." He was right. Justice isn't supposed to feel like celebration. It's supposed to feel like the weight of a door finally closing, heavy, final, and necessary. But the heaviest moment was still coming, and it arrived 2 weeks later, through a phone call I wasn't expecting. My mother called on a Sunday afternoon. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Maybe instinct, maybe hope, maybe just the fact that she'd never called me on a Sunday before. Sundays were Richard's day. Football and silence. "Danielle." Her voice was different, smaller, but somehow clearer, like she'd finally taken something heavy off her chest. "Hi, Mom." A long pause. I could hear her breathing. Then, "I should have said something 30 years ago. I'm sorry." I closed my eyes, leaned against the kitchen counter, the words I'd waited my entire life to hear, and they came wrapped in 30 years of regret. "I saw what he did to you," she continued, "every time, and I told myself it was his way of caring. That's what I told myself, Danielle, because the alternative, admitting I'd let my daughter be hurt by her own father, was too much." "Mom, let me finish, please." Her voice cracked. "What you did at that party, standing up like that, I've never been that brave, not once in my life, and watching you, it broke something open in me. I didn't say, 'It's okay,' because it wasn't. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. What I said was, 'I love you, Mom, but love isn't enough. Not anymore. I need you to show me.'" She was quiet then. "I started seeing someone, a therapist. Last week was my first session." I pressed my hand to my mouth. My eyes burned. "That's a good start, Mom." We talked for 20 more minutes. Carefully, the way you walk across thin ice, aware of every step, aware it could crack. But moving forward. 2 days later, I received a text from my father. Just one. The last communication I'd ever get from Richard Upton. "You chose a stranger over your own blood." I read it twice. Then I understood. And it was the final confirmation I needed. Gerald Marsh, his partner of 15 years, his friend, the man whose money he stole. My father still called him a stranger. Richard Upton didn't know what trust was. He only understood control. And when control was gone, he had nothing left. I deleted the text, and I didn't look back. 6 months after the party, Nathan and I hosted our own celebration. Not at the Whitfield, not at any venue. In Nathan's parents' backyard. 15 people. String lights from the hardware store, burgers on the grill. A Bluetooth speaker playing a playlist Nathan and I had made together on a lazy Sunday morning. No projector, no slideshow, no seating chart. My friends, Emily, Jasmine, the crew from work, sat on lawn chairs and drank beer from cans. Nathan's mom, Helen, brought her famous lemon bars. Mark gave a toast that was 3 sentences long and made everyone laugh. Real laughter. The kind that comes from the belly, not from obligation. My mother came. She arrived early, carrying a dish she'd made herself, something she hadn't done in years, because my father always ordered catering. She was quieter than usual, careful with her words, but she was there, present, trying. My father was not invited. Halfway through the evening, the doorbell rang. A delivery. Flowers. A massive arrangement of white peonies, with a card. I opened it. To Danielle, the most honest person I've ever known. Congratulations. Gerald and Patricia Marsh. I stood in the doorway holding that card for a long time. Nathan came up behind me. You okay? Yeah, I said. I spent 29 years trying to earn one word from my father. And here's Gerald Marsh giving me something my dad never could. Nathan put his arm around me. Some people build, some people take. You can't change which one your father chose to be. I pressed my face into his shoulder, and I cried. The first time since the party. Real, messy, ugly tears. Not because I was sad exactly, but because something that had been locked tight for 29 years had finally opened, and everything inside needed somewhere to go. 15 people who actually wanted to be there. That's all I ever needed. People ask me if I regret it. The answer is complicated. I regret it every single day, but not for the reason you might think. I don't regret the truth. I don't regret standing up. I regret that my father put me in a position where I had to choose between loyalty and honesty. That choice should never have been mine to make. Let me be clear about something. I didn't project that document to get revenge. I didn't walk up there with a plan. My plan was Monday morning, clean, professional, private. But when my father stood in front of every person I loved and told them I was worthless, when he turned my engagement party into one last performance where he was the star and I was the punchline, something shifted. Not anger, something deeper. The realization that if I sat down and swallowed this, I would swallow everything. Forever. I was tired of swallowing. The truth is, I'd been silent about two things: how my father treated me, and what my father had done to Gerald. And in that moment, I understood that the silence was the same. The silence about the abuse and the silence about the fraud came from the same place: fear. Fear of losing a father who was never really mine to begin with. Silence isn't loyalty. Silence is complicity. I learned that at a dinner party while watching my mother fold her napkin and smile. If you're listening to this and something about it feels familiar, if you know what it's like to sit at a table and shrink yourself so someone else can feel big, I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's not my place. But I will tell you this. Setting a boundary with your family doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you love yourself enough to say, I won't accept this anymore. And sometimes that's the bravest sentence a person can speak. Here's where I am now. Nathan and I are getting married next month. Small ceremony, 30 guests, every single one of them chosen by us. No one volunteered to take over the planning. No one needed to. My mother is still in therapy. We talk once a week, sometimes twice. It's careful, those conversations, like learning to walk again after a long time in a wheelchair. She's not the mother I needed when I was 9, but she's trying to be the mother I need now, and I'm learning to let her. Gerald's civil case is moving through the courts. I don't follow the details. I gave my deposition last month. Professional, fact-based, no emotion, just the numbers. The numbers are enough. Richard sold the lake house. I heard through a cousin that he's renting an apartment on the east side of town. Alone. Linda moved in with her sister in February. My father hasn't contacted me since that text message. I don't expect him to. The man who spent 29 years controlling every conversation finally ran into one he couldn't manage. I'm not a hero. I want you to know that. I'm not some warrior who planned the perfect takedown. I'm a woman who got pushed too far on the wrong night and happened to have the evidence to push back. That's the whole story. Some days I wake up and miss my father. Not the real one. The one I invented. The version who taught me to ride a bike and meant it. The version who said proud and wasn't performing. That father never existed. But the grief is real. If you're watching this and you know what it's like to mourn someone who's still alive, I see you. And I hope you know. You're allowed to grieve and move forward at the same time. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who finally told the truth. And the truth, it turns out, was enough. If Danielle's story stayed with you, drop a comment. Have you ever had to choose between loyalty and truth, or just type, I choose me? That's enough. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe. I share stories like this every week. Real people, real moments, real boundaries. There's another one waiting for you in the description. I think you'll feel it. I'll see you there. My name is Myra Warren. I'm 31. At least this one might actually make something of herself. That is what my father said, standing over my hospital bed, 6 hours after I gave birth to my daughter. My husband clenched his fists. My mother-in-law grabbed his arm. My own mother stared out the window like she'd gone deaf. And me? I just held my baby girl against my chest and smiled. Because for 31 years, I'd been the invisible Warren, the one who sat at the end of the table, the one whose name came up only when someone needed something done quietly. But for the last 4 years, I'd been keeping a secret. And if it ever came out, it would flip everything my father believed about this family upside down. I didn't plan what happened at that brunch. I just finally stopped pretending it didn't hurt. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. And if you're watching right now, drop your city and your local time in the comments. I'd love to know who's out there. Now let me take you back 4 years. To the night I found out my parents were about to lose their house. 4 years ago, I was 27. I just finished my advanced nursing certification, 6 months of night classes after 12-hour ER shifts, studying in my car during lunch breaks because the break room was always full. I called my father the day I passed. He picked up on the 4th ring. I told him. There was a pause, 3 seconds, maybe 4. And then he said, "That's nice. Hey, did Greg tell you he got promoted? Regional sales manager. They gave him the corner office." That was it. My entire accomplishment, swallowed whole by my brother's job title in under 10 seconds. I wish I could say that was unusual. It wasn't. Growing up, there was a pattern in the Warren house. I'd bring home honor roll. Dad would mention Greg's baseball trophy. I'd get accepted to nursing school on a partial scholarship. Dad would spend dinner talking about Greg's new apartment. Every single time, like clockwork. My name was a bridge sentence to get back to my brother. Thanksgiving that year made it crystal clear. We were all at my parents' place, the same split-level ranch in Dayton they'd had since 1989. Turkey, stuffing, the works. Dad stood up, raised his glass, and gave a toast. "To Greg," he said, "the pride of this family." Everyone clinked. I sat at the far end of the table, next to the bowl of mashed potatoes nobody touched. My mother reached under the table and patted my knee. "He doesn't mean it, sweetie," she whispered. But she didn't say a word to him. She never did. I told myself I was fine. I told myself it didn't matter. Then Ryan showed me something on his laptop that changed everything. Ryan, my husband, is a structural engineer. Steady hands, steady head. He'd been helping my parents fix things around their house for years. Leaky faucet, sagging porch steps, a cracked foundation wall in the basement. Dad never thanked him, but Ryan went anyway, because that's who he is. One Saturday, Ryan drove over to replace a corroded pipe under their kitchen sink. Mom was at the grocery store, Dad was napping in his recliner, and sitting right there on the kitchen counter, half hidden under a coupon flyer, was an envelope from the mortgage company. Ryan wasn't snooping, it was open. The red print was hard to miss. 3 months past due, 62 days to resolve or face foreclosure proceedings. He took a photo with his phone. That night, he showed me. I couldn't breathe. My father had retired early at 59. His back gave out after 31 years at the plant. He told everyone he was set, comfortable, that his pension and savings had it covered. "We don't need a thing," he'd say whenever anyone asked. "Warrens take care of themselves." It was a lie. His pension covered maybe 60% of their expenses. The rest had been bleeding out of savings for 2 years. I called Greg, figured maybe we could split something. His voice got tight immediately. "Yeah, I've been meaning to help, but things are tight right now. The divorce, you know." I knew. Greg's ex-wife got the condo. Greg got the debt. The golden child was drowning, too. He just had a nicer suit on while he sank. I lay awake that whole night, staring at the ceiling fan going in slow circles. I hated how my father treated me, but I couldn't watch my mother lose her home. So I called the one person I trusted with money. And she happened to be my mother-in-law. Linda Callahan is Ryan's mother. 58, widowed, retired from a 30-year career as a CPA. She's the kind of woman who wears reading glasses on a chain and can calculate a tip to the penny without looking at her phone. She raised Ryan alone after his father passed from a heart attack when Ryan was 14. She doesn't waste words, she doesn't waste money, and she doesn't tolerate cruelty. I sat at her kitchen table and told her everything. The overdue notice, the pension gap, Greg's silence, Dad's pride. Linda took off her glasses, set them on the table, looked at me for a long moment. "If you're going to do this," she said, "do it right. Don't let them know." She introduced me to Margaret Bowen, a financial advisor she'd worked with for years. Quiet, precise, trustworthy. Within 2 weeks, Margaret set up a modest trust, nothing fancy, that would route a monthly transfer of $2,800 from my savings into my parents' checking account. On their end, it would show up as a supplemental benefit. Clean, untraceable without digging. Ryan held my hand the night I signed the first authorization. "You sure?" he asked. "No," I said. "But I'd rather live with this than live with guilt." The first transfer hit in March. That same week Dad called Greg. I heard about it later from Mom. "Looks like the pension office finally fixed my benefits," Dad had said, proud as ever. Greg's response, "See? I told you it'd work out." Nobody thanked me. Nobody even knew. And that became the shape of the next 4 years. $2,800 a month. 48 months. Keeping the lights on in a house where my name was never the one they toasted. 2 years in, the transfers kept going, quiet, automatic, invisible. $67,000 and change. Nobody knew. Nobody asked. I didn't keep a running tally back then. I tried not to think about it. Every month, a notification would pop up on my banking app, and I'd swipe it away like a bill I'd already accepted. Meanwhile, the Warren family kept running on the same script. Christmas, 2 years into the transfers. We gathered at my parents' house. Same dining room, same mismatched chairs, same position for me at the end of the table. Greg sat at Dad's right. His new girlfriend, a paralegal named Tina, sat at his left, looking thrilled to be included. After the ham, Dad tapped his glass. He had an announcement. "I've been thinking about the future," he said. "When I get older, really older, someone's going to need to handle the family finances, make the big calls, so I'm putting Greg in charge." He said it like he was passing down a crown. Greg nodded solemnly, as though he hadn't maxed out 3 credit cards buying a boat he never used. Then Dad looked at me, not with cruelty exactly, something worse. Pity. "You just focus on your little job, Myra. Leave the big decisions to the men. That's how this family works." A few people chuckled, the nervous kind, the kind that fills silence when nobody knows what to say. Mom studied her napkin. Tina glanced at Greg like she was waiting for him to object. He didn't. Under the table, I was squeezing my water glass so hard my knuckles went white. Ryan placed his hand on my thigh and pressed gently. A quiet signal. I'm here. I thought the worst was over. Then I got pregnant, and everything escalated. 5 months along. I announced it in the family group chat with a photo of the ultrasound. Black and white blur, tiny fingers curled like a comma. Mom was ecstatic. Heart emojis, prayer hands, a voice memo of her crying happy tears. Greg texted, "Congrats, sis," and then immediately pivoted. He was seeing someone new, wanted to borrow the family cabin for Valentine's weekend. Could Mom check if the hot tub still worked? Dad's reply came 40 minutes later. 6 words and an emoji. Hope she's got Ryan's brains. I stared at that message for a long time. Read it once, twice, 3 times. Showed it to Ryan. He didn't say anything. Just set the phone face down on the counter and walked into the other room. That night, at my 20-week checkup, I sat alone in the dark ultrasound room while the tech went to get the doctor. The screen still glowed, my daughter's profile, her nose, the curve of her skull. I put my hand on my belly and whispered something I'd been thinking for weeks. "I promise you'll never sit at the end of the table." When Ryan picked me up, he was quiet for most of the drive. Then, at a red light 3 blocks from home, he said it. "Maybe it's time to stop the transfers." "Not yet. Mom needs it." Your mom, he said, eyes on the road. Not him. He was right. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. 3 months later, I was in a delivery room, drenched in sweat, holding my daughter for the first time. And the first thing my father said when he walked in was not congratulations. The hospital room was warm. Too warm. The kind of warmth that makes everything feel thick. The air, the sounds, the way time moves. Lily had been on my chest for 2 hours, skin to skin. Her eyes were closed. She weighed 6 pounds, 11 ounces. I'd counted every finger twice. Ryan sat beside me, his hand on the edge of the bed. Linda, my mother-in-law, was in the armchair by the window, knitting something pink. Mom had arrived an hour earlier, teary, quiet, holding my hand without saying much. That was enough. Dad showed up 4 hours late. Traffic, he said. He didn't hug me, didn't congratulate Ryan, didn't even glance at my mother, who'd been waiting for him since noon. He walked straight to the bed, looked down at Lily, tilted his head the way you'd inspect a used car. At least this one might actually make something of herself. The room went silent, not the comfortable kind, the kind where the oxygen leaves. Ryan stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. Linda was already on her feet, one hand on Ryan's shoulder, firm, steady. Not now. Mom turned to the window. I watched her reflection in the glass, jaw tight, eyes shut. I looked up at my father. He was smiling, that half-smile he wore when he thought he was being clever. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just held Lily a little tighter and said, "She already has, Dad. She's here." He waved his hand, a flick, really, like brushing away a gnat, and turned to Mom. "When's Greg coming? I want him to see his niece." He stayed 20 minutes. He never held her. The door barely clicked shut before Ryan was in the hallway. I heard it from the bed, one sharp thud, fist against drywall. Then Linda's voice, low and even. "Not here. Not now." A minute later, he came back. Knuckles red, eyes wet. He knelt beside the bed and pressed his forehead against my arm. "I'm done watching him do this to you." I put my hand on the back of his head. Lily was still asleep against my chest, breathing in that tiny rhythm newborns have. Fast, shallow, relentless. Linda sat back down. She took her time, folded the knitting into her lap. Then she looked at me, not with sympathy, not with pity, but with the kind of clarity that only comes from a woman who's done her own math. "Sweetheart," she said, "you've transferred over $100,000 to that man, and he walked into your recovery room 6 hours after you gave birth to his granddaughter, and that's what he said." I looked at the ceiling, blinked hard. "I know." Silence. "I know." Lily stirred. I shifted her to nurse. The room went quiet again, just monitors beeping, the hum of fluorescent lights, the sound of my daughter learning to eat. Then I spoke. Not loud, not angry, just level. "He's planning a brunch for the baby, a big one. Family, neighbors, everyone." Ryan shook his head. "You don't have to go." "Oh, I'm going." He looked at me. Linda looked at me. I looked at my daughter. "Because if he's going to use my baby to perform his perfect family show, he should at least know who's been funding the stage." 2 weeks after Lily was born, I made a phone call I'd been turning over in my head since the hospital. Margaret Bowen picked up on the second ring, professional as always. She didn't do small talk, which is one of the reasons I trusted her. "I need a summary," I said. "Every transfer, every month, every dollar. His account number, the trust routing, all of it." There was a pause on her end. Not hesitation, calculation. "You're sure? Once this is out, there's no taking it back." "I'm not trying to take anything back, Margaret. I'm just done hiding." The email arrived the next morning. I opened it at the kitchen table while Lily slept in the bassinet beside me. Ryan was at work. The house was quiet. 48 line items, 48 months, $2,800 each. Total, $134,400. Every entry time-stamped, routed, verified, clean documentation, the kind of paper trail that doesn't leave room for arguments. I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. Then I closed the phone, set it face down on the table, walked to the bassinet and watched my daughter sleep. Not yet. That's what I told myself. Not yet. I saved the file. Didn't tell anyone except Ryan, who nodded once, and Linda, who said, "Good." I still didn't plan to use it at the brunch. I want you to understand that. I was genuinely hoping, the way you hope against every shred of evidence, that my father would walk into that party and just be a normal grandfather for one afternoon. But then he called about the seating arrangements. Dad called on a Tuesday evening. I was nursing Lily in the rocking chair, one hand holding the phone on speaker. "Brunch is set for Sunday," he said. 30 guests. I reserved extra folding chairs from the church. I'll handle the speech. You just bring the baby and smile. "Can I say a few words too?" I asked. A beat of silence, then that tone, the one that sounds patient but means the opposite. "About what, Myra? Let me handle it. I know what people want to hear." I heard Mom's voice in the background, muffled, asking something about napkins. Then Dad's voice dropped, the way it does when he thinks he's being quiet but isn't, and I heard it clearly. "Make sure Greg sits next to me at the head table. Myra can sit with the cousins." He didn't know I was still on the line, or maybe he didn't care. My daughter's brunch, my daughter's welcome party, and I was being assigned to the overflow table like a distant relative who showed up uninvited. I ended the call, set the phone on the armrest, looked down at Lily. She'd fallen asleep mid-feed, lips still parted, milk-drunk and peaceful. I sat there for a long time. The house was still. The ceiling fan clicked on every third rotation. Ryan kept meaning to fix it. Then I picked up my phone and texted Ryan 3 lines. "We're going to that brunch. I'm bringing my phone. And ask your mom to print the backup." He replied in under a minute. Just one word. "Done." I put the phone down and rocked my daughter in the dark. Sunday was 5 days away. Sunday morning. Bright, clear, 72 degrees. The kind of Ohio weather that makes everyone believe in fresh starts. My parents' backyard looked like a magazine spread, or at least Dad's version of one. White tablecloths, pink balloons tied to every chair, a hand-painted banner strung between the oak tree and the fence post. "Welcome, baby Lily." Dad had outdone himself. Not for Lily, of course, for the audience. 30 guests, aunts, uncles, cousins. 3 neighbors, including Mrs. Dobson from across the street, who'd brought a casserole and her reading glasses. 2 of Dad's old buddies from the plant, Greg and his new girlfriend, whose name I'd already forgotten. Everyone dressed in Sunday casual, holding lemonade, complimenting the yard. Ryan carried Lily in her car seat. I walked beside him, Linda 1 step behind. We came through the side gate, and I saw it immediately. The seating. 2 long tables. The main one, front and center, closest to the house, had place cards. Dad at the head, Greg to his right, Mom to his left, Greg's girlfriend next to Greg. Open seat for one of Dad's buddies. The second table, smaller, pushed toward the back fence near the recycling bins, had no place cards, just plastic cups and paper plates. That's where I was supposed to sit. At my own daughter's welcome party. By the recycling. Aunt Helen, Dad's younger sister, 61, no filter, God bless her, spotted me before I'd even set down the diaper bag. "Honey," she said, hugging me sideways, "why are you all the way back here? This is your baby's party." I looked at the head table. Dad was arranging his speech notes beside his plate. "Ask Dad," I said. Helen's eyes narrowed. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. They served quiche and fruit salad. Dad waited until every plate was full. Then he stood, tapped his glass with a butter knife, and smiled the smile he saves for audiences. Speech time. 30 faces turned. Forks went down. Even Lily stopped fussing in Ryan's arms. 30 years, Dad began. "I've been waiting for this family to give me a granddaughter." He pointed at Greg. "Your turn next, son." Laughter. Easy, comfortable, rehearsed. Then he talked about the Warrens, the legacy, the values. His voice swelled the way it always does when he's performing. The retired foreman giving one last shift speech. "My son, Greg," he said, lifting his glass. "The backbone of this family, the one I know I can count on." Greg raised his glass back. Tina squeezed his arm. Mom beamed. Then Dad's eyes found me. Back table, plastic cup in hand. "And Myra, well..." He paused, chuckled. "We all know she's the quiet one. I just hope little Lily here got her drive from Ryan's side of the family. A ripple of laughter, mostly nervous. Helen didn't laugh. Mrs. Dobson set down her fork. But Dad wasn't done. He walked toward Ryan, who was holding Lily near the dessert table. Dad leaned in, studying her face like he was reading a resume. But look at her. Strong chin, bright eyes. This one's got potential. He straightened up, grinning. More than her mama at that age, I can tell you that. He laughed. Alone. The yard went quiet. Not the respectful kind. The kind where people suddenly become very interested in their fruit salad. I sat at my table, both hands flat, fingers still. No trembling. No tears. I looked straight at my father. And I waited. Greg stood up next. Of course he did. He lifted his glass, the real glass, from the main table, and cleared his throat. To Dad, he said. The man who keeps this family together. Everyone drank. I watched the lemonade tremble in my plastic cup. Then Greg turned to me, grinning that easy, golden boy grin. He crossed the yard to my table and clapped me on the shoulder like I was a teammate who'd fumbled, but he wasn't going to make a thing of it. Hey, sis. Don't worry. Lily's got the Warren genes. She'll be fine. He squeezed my shoulder and walked away, back to the main table, back to his seat at the right hand of the father. Aunt Helen appeared beside me. She crouched down, voice low. Are you okay, sweetheart? I'm perfect, Aunt Helen. She looked at me. I could tell she didn't believe me. I could also tell she was angry. Not at me. Ryan leaned close to my ear, Lily cradled in his other arm. Say the word and we leave. Right now. I looked at my daughter. She was awake, staring at the pink balloons with that wide, unfocused wonder newborns have. She didn't know what her grandfather had just said about her mother. She didn't know any of it. She was just watching balloons. I looked at Linda. She sat 2 chairs down, her handbag on her lap, calm, upright, watching me the way a pilot watches instruments. She gave me a nod, small, certain, one nod. That was all I needed. I took a breath, stood up, pushed my chair in, neatly, quietly, the way I do everything. Then I walked to the main table. Dad, can I say a few words? He looked surprised. Now? We're about to cut cake. It won't take long. He waved his hand like he always does. Make it quick. So I did. I stood at the head of the main table. No microphone, no notes. Just me, my voice, and 30 people who suddenly didn't know where to look. Thank you all for being here for Lily, I said. My voice was steady. I made sure of that. She's 3 weeks old, and she's already surrounded by more love than I ever expected. I let that land. A few smiles. Mrs. Dobson pressed her hand to her chest. Dad just said something about hoping Lily got her drive from Ryan's side. I turned to my father. He was still smiling. The frozen kind. The kind that means he's calculating. That's fine. He's been saying versions of that my whole life. The smile cracked. Just a fraction. But there's something everyone here should know. Something I've kept quiet for 4 years. Dad shifted in his chair, his arms crossed. Myra, this isn't the time for drama. You're right, Dad. It's the time for honesty. Mom reached for his arm. Myra, please. I looked at her. Really looked. Mom, I love you, but I need you to listen this time. Just this once. She let go of Dad's sleeve. Her hands dropped to her lap. I saw her chin tremble, but she didn't speak. 30 people. No one moved. A balloon popped somewhere, one of the pink ones tied to the fence, and a cousin's kid yelped. But nobody turned. Every pair of eyes was on me. I felt it then, that weightless electric clarity you get when you've been holding something for so long that finally letting go feels less like a choice and more like gravity. 4 years, $134,000. I saw. And a truth that was about to change everything. 4 years ago, I said, I found out this house was 3 months from foreclosure. The word landed like a stone in still water. I watched it ripple across the yard. Aunt Helen's mouth opening, Mrs. Dobson gripping her armrest, Greg's girlfriend looking at Greg like she was seeing him for the first time. Dad's pension wasn't covering it. Savings were gone. The mortgage company had already sent the final notice. Dad's jaw tightened. That's private family. I'm not finished. He stopped. I don't think anyone had ever said that to him before. Greg couldn't help. I glanced at my brother. No offense, Greg. Greg stared at his plate, his ears turned red. Tina pulled her hand off his arm. So, I set up an anonymous monthly transfer. $2,800 every single month. For 48 months. Whispers. Helen covered her mouth. One of Dad's plant buddies set his glass down slowly, deliberately, like he needed something to do with his hands. I turned back to my father. Dad, you told everyone your pension got adjusted, that the benefits office fixed your account. I held his gaze. It wasn't them. I let the silence do the work. It was me, the quiet one, the one who'd never make something of herself. Dad opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That's ridiculous. I never... Check your bank account, Dad. I didn't shout, didn't lean forward, said it the same way I'd say, pass the salt. I turned to Linda. She reached into her handbag, pulled out a printed sheet, 48 lines dated, stamped, and set it on the table in front of him. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. His face went white. A notification from Margaret Bowen. Per Ms. Warren's request, the supplemental trust transfer has been permanently discontinued effective today. Donald Warren stood at the head of his own table, phone in one hand, printed bank statement in the other, and for the first time in my life, he had nothing to say. His face didn't crumble all at once. It happened in stages, confusion, then recognition, then something I'd never seen on my father. Shame. Greg broke first. He pushed back from the table, chair scraping the patio. Wait, what? You've been... How? He looked at me, then at Dad, then back at me. 4 years? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The paper answered. Aunt Helen stood up. She's 5'3", and she filled the entire backyard. Donald, is this true? Your daughter's been paying your mortgage this whole time? Dad's voice came out thin. This is none of your business, Helen. You just spent 10 minutes telling everyone she'd never amount to anything. Helen pointed at the statement. I'd say it is my business. Murmurs spread through the tables. Mrs. Dobson shook her head slowly, the way you do when you're disappointed in someone you've known for 30 years. One of Dad's plant buddies picked up his jacket from the back of his chair and quietly put it on, like he was getting ready to leave. Mom started to cry, not dramatically, just tears falling one after another into her untouched quiche. She wasn't crying because she was embarrassed. She was crying because she knew. She'd always known I was the one who showed up. She just never had the courage to say it out loud. Dad looked up from his phone. His eyes found mine. You did this to humiliate me. No, Dad. My voice didn't waver. I did the transfers because I love Mom. I stopped them because I love myself. I didn't leave. Not yet. I stood right where I was, 3 feet from my father, 30 witnesses, a warm breeze pushing the pink balloons sideways. Dad, I'm not doing this to punish you. He was still holding the printout. His thumb had smudged the ink on line 37. I'm doing this because Lily is 3 weeks old, and I refuse to let her grow up watching her mother be treated like she doesn't matter. Helen sat back down. She folded her arms and nodded, one firm dip of the chin, like a judge who'd heard enough. If you want a relationship with your granddaughter, I said, it starts with respecting her mother. Not because I pay your bills, not because I proved something today, because I'm your daughter. That should have been enough. Dad's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Nothing came out. I'd seen him speechless maybe twice in my entire life. Both times someone else had been in control of the conversation. This time, it was me. I'm not asking for an apology today, I said. I'm telling you the rules have changed. I turned to Mom. She was wiping her eyes with a paper napkin, mascara smudged, hands trembling. Mom, I love you. The door is always open. I paused. But I'm done sitting at the kids' table in my own life. She nodded. Not the dismissive kind she gave at Thanksgiving. A real nod, the kind that costs something. Greg sat frozen. Tina had moved her chair 6 inches away from his without anyone noticing. I looked at the yard, the banner, the balloons, the folding chairs from the church. A party my father had thrown to showcase himself. In a house my father would have lost without me. Time to go. I walked back to the overflow table, picked up the diaper bag, checked Lily's bottle was capped, folded the blanket Ryan had draped over the car seat. Small, ordinary motions, the kind of things a mother does 100 times a day without thinking. Ryan was already standing, Lily in his arms. He hadn't said a word through the whole thing. He didn't need to. He'd been waiting for this moment longer than I had. Linda rose from her chair, gathered her handbag, and walked over to me. She wrapped both arms around my shoulders and pulled me close. Her perfume, lavender, always lavender, mixed with the backyard honeysuckle. "Your father-in-law would have been so proud," she whispered. I bit my lip, nodded into her shoulder. Linda's husband, Tom, had died when Ryan was 14. I never met him, but in that moment, I felt him. We moved toward the side gate. Nobody stopped us. Nobody tried. 30 people parted like water, and we walked straight through. I passed within 2 feet of my father. He was still standing at the head of the table, bank statement in one hand, phone dark in the other, staring at the numbers. I stopped. "Dad?" He looked up. His eyes were red. "I didn't do all of this for a thank you." I held his gaze. "But a thank you would have been nice." I turned and kept walking. Ryan opened the gate. Linda followed. Lily made a small sound, not a cry, just a murmur, and I adjusted her hat against the sun. The car was parked on the street. Ryan buckled Lily in. I climbed into the passenger seat, closed the door, and then I cried, for the first time, not because it hurt, because it was over. Ryan started the engine, reached across the console, took my hand, didn't say a word, just drove us home. The calls started before we even got home. Aunt Helen was first. I picked up on the second ring because it was Helen, and Helen doesn't call unless she means it. "Honey," she said, "I just want you to know. I called your father before I left the driveway, told him he owes you an apology, a real one, not the kind where he explains why he was actually right." I laughed. For the first time in weeks, a real laugh. "Thank you, Aunt Helen. Don't thank me. You did the hard part. I just yelled at a man who deserved it." By Monday, 3 more calls had come in. Mrs. Dobson sent a flower arrangement with a handwritten card tucked into the baby's breath. "I raised 3 daughters. I've never been prouder of someone else's child." I put the card on the refrigerator and cried a little more. One of Dad's old plant buddies, Frank, a big man with a quiet voice, called Dad directly. I heard about it later from Mom. "Dawn, is it true? Your girl's been covering your mortgage?" Dad hung up on him. Frank didn't call back. Then, on Wednesday, Greg called me. His voice was different, smaller, stripped of the easy charm he usually wore like aftershave. "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed anything?" Silence. Long enough to count. "I don't know. Maybe." That was the most honest thing my brother had said to me in 35 years. I could hear something behind it. Not anger, not defensiveness. Recognition. The sound of a man realizing the pedestal he'd been standing on was built by someone else. "Greg," I said, "it's okay." "No," he said. "It's really not." He hung up, but it didn't feel like an ending. Mom told me later what happened after we left the brunch. The guests trickled out within 20 minutes. Quick goodbyes, tight smiles, car doors closing up and down the block. Helen was the last to leave. She hugged Mom at the front door and said, "Call me if you need anything, Patty." She didn't say goodbye to Dad. By evening, it was just the 2 of them. The backyard still had the banner up, "Welcome Baby Lily," flapping in the wind like a punchline nobody laughed at. Dad sat at the kitchen table. The printed statement was still in front of him. 48 lines. He hadn't moved it. Mom sat across from him. She told me she poured 2 cups of coffee and didn't say anything for almost 10 minutes. She just waited. Then, for the first time in 40 years of marriage, my mother pushed back. "She kept us in this house, Donald. 4 years." Dad stared at the paper. "She had no right to tell everyone." Mom's voice went flat, hard. A voice I'd never heard her use. "She had every right. You stood up in front of 30 people and told them your granddaughter might succeed in spite of her mother." She leaned forward. What did you expect? Dad looked at the window. The backyard was empty now. The chairs were still out, plates still on the tables, a balloon caught in the gutter. The house he'd almost lost, the yard he'd almost surrendered, kept alive, every month, every check, every dollar, by the daughter he'd seated at the back table. Call her, Donald. And say what? Mom's voice cracked, but it held. Start with I'm sorry. He didn't call. Not that night. But he didn't sleep either. A week passed. The dust was still settling, but life doesn't stop for family drama. Diapers still needed changing. Night feeds still came at 2 and 5 a.m. Lily still needed me. And honestly, I needed her. It was a Thursday morning, 6:15. The house was quiet. Ryan had already left for a site visit. I was in the rocking chair, nursing Lily in that half-dark, half-golden light that comes through east-facing windows at dawn. And she smiled. Not gas, not a reflex. She looked up at me, eyes focusing for the first time on something specific, something real. And the corners of her mouth pulled up. Just slightly. Just enough. I sobbed. The ugly, shaking kind. Not because I was sad, because for the first time in weeks, something beautiful happened that had nothing to do with pain. Ryan came home that evening, and I showed him the photo I'd taken. His eyes went soft. He kissed Lily's forehead, then mine. I posted it in the family group chat. No caption needed, but I wrote one anyway. First smile, my whole world. The reactions came fast. Helen, heart emoji, fire emoji, 5 exclamation points. Mrs. Dobson, she wasn't in the chat, but Helen forwarded it, and she texted me separately. Greg sent a red heart. Mom called immediately, crying, laughing, talking so fast I couldn't understand half of it. Dad didn't react. Didn't call. But Mom told me later. Your father sat on the porch and stared at that photo on his phone for 10 minutes. Didn't say a word. Just looked. I didn't know what to do with that. So I told Ryan what I'd been thinking for days. I don't need him to change. I just need him to stop pretending I don't exist. Then, on a Tuesday night, my doorbell rang at 9 p.m. I opened the door. It was my father. Alone. He was wearing his old brown jacket, the one with the frayed cuffs that Mom keeps threatening to throw out. No flowers, no gift bag, no props. Just Donald Warren standing on my porch under the yellow light, looking 10 years older than he had 3 weeks ago. Ryan appeared behind me, one hand resting on my shoulder, not pushing, not pulling, just there. Can I come in? Dad asked. That depends on why you're here. He looked down at the welcome mat. His work boots were untied, something I'd never seen before. My father tied his boots before he tied his tie, always. I'm here because... He trailed off, swallowed. Patty told me I should come, and Helen, and Greg. That's a lot of people telling you what to do, I said. What about you, Dad? Why are you here? He didn't answer right away. A moth bounced against the porch light. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and stopped. When he looked up, his eyes were red. Not crying red, exhaustion red. The kind you get from 3 weeks of not sleeping and not admitting why. I'm here because I'm ashamed. 3 words. Quiet. No performance. No hand gestures. No audience. I searched his face for the act, for the calculation, for the half-smile he used when he was managing a room. It wasn't there. I stepped back, opened the door wider. Didn't say come in, didn't need to. The open door said it. He stepped inside. Ryan squeezed my shoulder once, then disappeared upstairs with Lily, giving us the room. Dad stood in my hallway, hands in his jacket pockets, looking at the family photos on the wall. Me and Ryan, Lily's hospital photo, Linda at Christmas, none of him. He noticed, I could tell. He didn't mention it. I made coffee, not because he deserved it, but because my hands needed something to do. We sat at my kitchen table, the cheap IKEA one Ryan and I had assembled the week we moved in. No tablecloth, no place cards, no head and foot, just 2 chairs, 2 mugs, and 31 years of things unsaid. Dad wrapped both hands around the mug, stared into it like the answer might be floating there. I don't know how to say this, he said. I never learned. Try. He took a breath, let it out slow. I looked at that bank statement every day since the brunch. $134,000. He shook his head. And I couldn't even hold her when she was born. Why not? The question sat between us. I watched him wrestle with it, jaw working, eyes shifting, pride fighting honesty in real time. Because I was scared. I waited. You grew up and became everything I couldn't, Myra. You put yourself through school, built a career, bought a house, married a good man, and you did it all without me. His voice thinned. Without needing a single thing from me, and I couldn't stand it. The refrigerator hummed. Upstairs I could hear Ryan walking Lily in slow circles, her white noise machine a soft static through the ceiling. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me, I said. He nodded. Slow. I'm not asking you to start the money again. Good, because that's not happening. No anger in my voice, no cruelty, just fact. He took a sip of coffee, set the mug down. His hand was shaking, just slightly, a tremor he'd never have let anyone see at the head of his own table. I know, he said. For a moment, neither of us spoke. And the silence wasn't empty. It was the fullest our kitchen had ever been. I'm not going to pretend this is fixed, I said. One conversation doesn't erase 31 years. I know. Here's what I need. I didn't rehearse this, but it came out clear, like I'd been writing it in my head since I was 12 years old, and overheard him tell Uncle Ray that Greg was the one with the potential. You don't compare Lily to anyone, not to Greg's future kids, not to her cousins, not to me. She's her own person, full stop. He nodded. You don't dismiss me in front of family. Not as a joke, not as a habit. Not ever again. Another nod, slower this time. And if you want to be in Lily's life, you show up. Not for the speech, not for the audience. You show up at bedtime and tummy time and the boring Tuesday afternoons when nothing happens. That's where being a grandfather counts. He looked at the table, traced a scratch in the wood with his fingernail. What about the money? He asked. Quiet, almost ashamed to ask. If Mom needs help, she can call me directly. We'll figure it out. But I'm not sending anonymous checks so you can pretend you don't need your daughter. He flinched. I saw it. A small contraction, like I'd touched something still raw. Then I said the hardest part. And Dad, I need you to say it. Not for me. For you. He looked up. His eyes were wet. Not streaming, just bright, glassy, the way water looks right before it spills. I'm sorry, Myra. His voice broke on my name. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough. I nodded, didn't hug him. Not yet. But I nodded. That's a start. I stood up, poured him more coffee, set the mug in front of him, sat back down. It wasn't a happy ending. It was an honest beginning. It's been 2 months since that night at my kitchen table. I won't pretend everything transformed overnight. It didn't. My father is 63 years old and has been running on the same operating system since 1961. Change doesn't come easy. It comes awkward. He started visiting Lily on Sundays. The first time he stood in the doorway of the nursery for a full minute, hands at his sides, like he'd forgotten how to enter a room without commanding it. Then he sat in the rocking chair. I placed Lily in his arms. He held her stiffly at first, elbows locked, jaw tight, and then she grabbed his pinky. His whole body softened. I watched it happen in real time, like ice cracking in spring. He brought her a teddy bear the second visit. Way too big, almost the size of Lily herself. She screamed when she saw it. He looked devastated. Ryan and I laughed for 10 minutes. He doesn't say I love you to me. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But last week, when I was carrying Lily to the door to say goodbye, he stopped at the porch steps, turned around, looked at me. She's lucky, he said. She's got your stubbornness. I raised an eyebrow. I'll take that as a compliment. It is one. First time. A small thing. But I heard it. Greg calls me every week now. Nothing big, just, how's Lily? How are you? Simple. Real. We're not best friends. We're something better. We're honest. Mom sent a handwritten card. Not long. Just, I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry. Love, Mom. I taped it to the refrigerator, right next to the photo of Lily's first smile. And here's what I learned. Not a lesson. Just something true. You don't have to set fire to the whole house to get warm. Sometimes you just need to stop standing in the cold. If this story reminded you of someone, a parent, a sibling, a version of yourself, I'd love to hear it. Were you the invisible one, or did you finally speak up? Drop your story in the comments. And if this one hit close to home, there are more stories just like it, waiting for you in the description. I'll see you in the next one.